We are an independent district of the state, which really doesn't mean much, but we function as a nonprofit. We're primarily grant funded. We do receive a small amount of money from property taxes, but we're primarily grant funded. We are about 18 people strong, and our entire focus is to help private landowners properly steward and manage their property. So we provide technical assistance as well as some financial assistance resources. And RCDs have evolved since the 40s in response to the Dust Bowl. So after the Dust Bowl, they realized farmers needed some assistance in order to keep their soils healthy, make sure the Dust Bowl doesn't happen again. Obviously, a lot has changed since then in our current state, and particularly in our local region. Tree health, forest health, obviously wildfire prevention and safety is at the forefront of what we do. And so my job in particular, I help landowners learn how to apply low intensity, low complexity prescribed fire back on the landscape. What does that mean? So in 2019, the program was funded by CAL FIRE. They asked us to develop a mechanism to increase pace and scale of prescribed fire in Placer County. It's just a bunch of buzzwords, but basically what it allowed us to do was it gave us the autonomy to respond directly to the needs of our community. So we went out and asked, landowners, what do you think about prescribed fire? And they were overwhelmingly positive about it. They said, we understand the ecological benefits of it, we understand the fire safety benefits of it, we understand that it protects first responders when they come in, we understand the fuels reduction benefits, but we don't have the confidence, knowledge, or skill in order to do it ourselves. And so I have a little bit about my background before I dive more into the program. I studied soils at University of Nevada, Reno. I ended up not enjoying the academic style and went and fought fire with the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest for a few years. I had the immense privilege of getting this job in Placer County and becoming close friends with a mentor of mine who is a retired battalion chief in this area and has taught me an immense amount and helped grow this program significantly. He was supposed to be here today, but he was sick. What we've done was develop a program that has reduced prescribed fire to its lowest possible level. So there are a number of different factors that affect fire behavior, some of which could include topography, fuel depth, so how deep the fuels are, what type of fuel you're burning, so is it grass, is it brush, is it timber, is there any valuable infrastructure near the prescribed burn, and then working with landowners to reduce that complexity. So ways we can do that is make the unit smaller, don't burn two aspects at once, right? Only burn one because that reduces complexity. Bring in more people to help you. Always have water, obviously, but and then so there's all these different ways that we can reduce complexity. What we've found over the last few years, so we have been hosting a combination of classroom workshops and on-the-ground training demonstration burns. So we want people to know why they should burn. We live in a fire-dependent ecosystem. It's incredibly important, particularly in this environment. But then we also take them out because you can't learn to ride a bike from a YouTube video. So we do death by PowerPoint, and then we bring them out and we actually do a prescribed burn with people. And we want them to feel empowered to actually do it by themselves. So our biggest barrier is the weather. And because the weather windows for prescribed burning are very narrow, we need as many people as possible safely and legally engaging in it so that we can actually progress and make a difference in the state. What we found is that, so I'll give you the stats from this past year. Between October 2023 and March 2024, that was when we did all of our demonstration burns. The RCD ourselves hosted 11 demonstration burns that were open to the public, and we burned about cumulatively 39 acres. That's a drop in the bucket, and what that means is that the burns are pretty small. They're between 1 and 5 acres. But they're really focused on just training others. Then we requested all of the landowners that we've trained over the past few years who have attended any type of event to report back the work that they're completing themselves without our supervision. And this year we found that they cumulatively completed about 190 acres of prescribed burning. We received 72 responses. So what that means is people are starting to feel empowered to safely do it. We also request information for any escapes, losses of control, any third-party damages, and that was none. Any injuries, all of those reports were 0. But not only with prescribed burning, we're not just pushing a prescribed burning agenda, we're really pushing a wildfire literacy agenda. So, question?
Thank you. So you had said this is for private landowners in the county?
Yes.
And you guys are just the whole county?
Yes.
God, it's a huge area. Okay. Oh, I wish there were more of you. So is there a scope of how big that goes? Of like people like, this is a 5-acre lot, we've got a 2-acre lot over there, but like across the highway is Placer Land Trust. I suppose that's private, but that's much bigger acreage. Would they be able to get help from you guys as well?
We have been working directly with Placer Land Trust, and are you guys familiar with Canyon View Preserve right off I-80 by the Bowman exit?
Oh, yeah, I had a birthday party there. We went on a hike, a birthday hike.
There's been a recent burn there.
We had burned there on Halloween. Halloween of last year.
We were out there November last year.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
And we did a 5-acre burn there, and with the idea that they are a private landowner in the county that owns a ton of land, they need to start using prescribed fire safely as a tool to manage that land. They have a responsibility because they have land surrounding all of you as well. And so we're hoping to train them up in addition to a lot of private landowners to use fire to manage their property. So as far as scale, I think one of the first burns we did was with a retired librarian, and we burned less than a 1/4 acre in her backyard on a 1/4 acre lot in Meadow Vista. It was very, very simple. She invited some of her neighbors, and it was just to say like, hey, this is something we all can engage in. Obviously, we want to make sure, particularly when we're working with landowners who may be less physically able to do the job, we want them to understand that the RCD is also somewhere where you can request that type of help. And so we created a prescribed burn association, which is a community-driven effort to provide that level of personnel, provide that avenue for assistance when people want help for lighting the fire, but primarily just making sure it stays where it is, and things like that. So that's a volunteer effort, and that's primarily how I'm able to communicate with the community, is through that listserv. Right now I have about 400 people on there. I'd love for everybody in the county to be on there. But yeah, with that, sorry, I went a little bit of all over the place.
Can I point out those sheets? Okay.
Yes.
Can you film for me? Thank you, Loki. I'm very official. I have a badge on my shirt. That's what, thank Loki pointed that out. So today I stopped by Emergency Services in Placer County, and they very kindly gave me some brochures to give all my neighbors. I'm so glad there's 2 of you here. And reducing wildfire risk in the home. I'm going to have some of these in my house. All you got to do is call me and I will bring them over. And then emergency quick guide. This is super cool. It's all color coded for people that love to look at colorful things. Evacuation terms and weather warnings, staying informed. And then Cordi said she gave me a ton of these RX Fire field guides that all my neighbors got in a little packet to look at, especially the ones that are older and might need help. We want them to reach out and ask for help, right? And then I have how to prepare your home for wildfires. So they changed the zoning, actually. I just talked to the Auburn Fire Chief. It used to be out to 5 feet, and now it's like 0 to 5 feet, and then up to 30 little zones that you have. And 0 is they really like cement and rocks around your house, no plants super close to the walls. And they have all kinds of tips for you. And there's also, I have access to many insurance people that can give you tips on how to get the lowest price for your annual fees that you have to pay. I can't help you with California Fair Plan though. That's a whole nother story. And then low cost retrofit list. These are all ways that you can harden your home, like things to do with your chimney, with your vents, and keeping those embers out, because that's the first thing you really got to watch out for is embers, and then of course the radiant heat that comes along after that, right? Mm-hmm. Wait, like I know what I'm talking about because I'm official. All right, come on over here. Scott,
were you done? Or did you
Yeah.
everything?
No, you're good.
I do. I'm going to skip these for this video just because I am going to break it up into little
I didn't realize this.
clips.
Sorry, I did have another question for Cordi.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like I have experience with Leave No Trace.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like we used to do courses, basically train the trainers. And
Okay.
so as L&T masters, we would go out and like give a class to a certain group of people, knowing that they had many more contacts back where they came from, and basically what we train them, they train it on down the line. Is that kind of what you're trying to do?
That's
with,
what we are
Okay.
really hoping to do. And that has been quasi-successful in certain communities. So in Iowa Hill, Forest Hill, they're gritty people, and they live there for a reason, right? They don't necessarily trust the government, and I do represent the government in some capacity. So it's really, and what I've also come to realize since I got this position is that it's about 2% fire and 98% people. It's about building trust within the community, and it's about the community building trust among each other, right? People have experienced incredibly traumatic experiences with wildfire, and so it creates fear. Fear creates distrust, and fear creates chaos. And what we're trying to do is establish a program that recreates that trust and also helps generate a more educated public surrounding wildfire fuels and how to appropriately manage it in this environment.
Okay, my turn. My name's Scott Wofford. I'm with Sierra Defensible Space. I'm the owner-operator. I have 25 years firefighting experience. There's a lot that I can cover. The basics, what I can do is completely different than what she talks about. Controlled burns is not anything into my scope, but what I can do is clear the brush and help to educate the homeowner in regards to what is going to allow the incoming engine companies to be able to extinguish the fire. So, a real basic bread and butter breakdown of how a firefighter works when it comes to a large incident. So if we took this area here and we had a fire in this neighborhood, depending on the size of it, the weather, whatever happens, you're gonna have Higgins and Placer County Fire would respond. Those are your closest. You might have Placer Hills Fire coming in from Christian Valley, but most likely it's gonna be your closest station's Atwood or Dobbins. So you're kind of in the middle of two districts, so you kind of have a long response time. First off, you're gonna have air tankers. Air tankers are always gonna be the fastest to get here, and they're gonna try to knock the heat out of the fire at the head. But after that, as the companies come in, we do triage. And we go through a neighborhood and we look at what houses have defensible space, what houses don't have defensible space. And I will tell you that every firefighter in the state of California will look at a house and go, if you haven't cleared it, we're not even gonna stop. We will let it burn. We don't risk our life if you don't care about your property. If you haven't done anything beforehand to remove the brush, to do any clearance, to do anything that shows us you care, we've got other people that do care, we're gonna go to their house. And that's what happens in a fire. What I can do is come in, and as you can tell, there's so much brush, I can't clear it all. I couldn't clear cut everything, that's the safest. But what I can do is I can give you enough defensible space that when a strike team comes in, and what a strike team is when there's a fire, you're gonna get 5 engine companies, is a strike team. Those strike teams are gonna be coming from the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Redding, they could even come from Nevada, they could be National Guard. They're not familiar with your topography and your terrain. So you could get a strike team in here from Los Angeles, and they're gonna be very, very uncomfortable because this is not the fuels they have in LA. So the strength of having a fireman that comes to be able to do defensible space is the ability to create that defensible space so that the incoming fire companies can go, okay, this person has taken the effort to give us something to work from. And that's ultimately what it looks at, what we come down to when there's a big fire such as what's going on in Chico, LA, the Mosquito Fire. Chico just had a fire go out today. So there's a big fire that just started today. There's 2 Placer County strike teams that are already on the way there.
Unfortunately, we had Iowa Hill burn this year too.
Yeah. And I fought fire on Iowa Hill about 20 years ago.
Oh, geez.
So I'm very familiar with the terrain, and I know the locals up there. It's, you know, They want to be up there and left alone.
Yeah.
You know, and there is a lot of that.
So do our neighbors.
Yeah.
I feel like they're gritty too.
Totally.
Except for
Placer County
Eric.
is gritty.
Eric's excluded. And Loki.
Loki's not even my real name.
So
I
in
know.
the defensible space, look, like with all the different zones and the clearances, it's those are all a purpose. Those all have a purpose to help the incoming firefighting companies to be able to make a stand. So any of the brush that you can remove that you can clear around the property, or you can hire someone to do, and that's where I come in. Because what a hand crew, what guys can do by themselves, I can do in minutes with a big machine. So I use an excavator with a mulching head, and the easiest way to explain it is I literally can mow down the forest. I can just mow trees into mulch. And when I'm done, there's just a bed of mulch on the ground. So I have a different way of handling the wildfire problem. Resource district will burn it. I'll shred it into mulch. So there's two different avenues of handling one problem. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, so our neighbors, next door to us, the gal sold the house, but before she did, she basically had a big landscape company come in, and they used one of the masticators on a bobcat and stuff, and so they did mulch a bunch of stuff.
But there's actually like fairly good sized chunks of wood and other like woody stuff that was on the ground.
Yeah.
Better for fire or worse for fire? I mean,
Well, it doesn't really matter. That litter on the ground, if you had a big enough fire, it's going to burn, and that duff, it does smolder and burn forever. The key is when it comes to fire, we want to keep the fire on the ground.
Oh, on the ground.
Okay. The key is we don't want the fire to get into the treetops.
Okay.
If the fire gets into the canopy, it'll run the canopy, and then you have a giant problem. So when it comes to the defensible space, we have the zones which are recommended, and then you have what are called ladder fuels. And that's the fuels that go from the grass up the tree into the canopy. And what we're trying to do is, Resource District is doing a control burn, gets rid of the grass. I can come in and get rid of all the ladder fuels. So now that fire on the ground is never going to get into the canopy.
Right, okay.
And that's ideal. And that's what is going to be the safest and the most protection for a neighborhood, is to get rid of all the, either burn the grass, put down gravel, irrigate it and put down field grass, pasture grass, whatever it may be, and keep it irrigated and mowed. Or you got to clear all your brush out so you just actually have bare soil. There's lots of different avenues and ways that it could be handled, and a lot of it comes down to individual. What works here may not work necessarily across the street or on the hill or anywhere else. But the main thing for defensible space is, one, it's going to protect your property and protect your investment, and two, it's going to give the firefighters that are coming in during a fire a reason to stop. Because what will happen is, for example, I'll explain to you, if there's a strike team, there's a fire, you'll have 5 engines come in here. We'll put, say, an engine here, there'll be an engine across the way, your next neighbor, you might have another engine 5 houses that way. You'll have 5 engines scattered in this neighborhood, and we will be protecting the whole neighborhood. And we'll be making an effort as much as we can to do clearance and to do things while the fire's going on. Then once the fire comes, depending on the situation, most commonly, most often our tactics would be from that point is we actually then start our firing operation, and we'll fire from around your house, we'll fire what we can, and then we'll leave. And then after that,
Does that mean start fire?
yep,
So
we will
basically
backfire
burn what
from
you've
your
got?
property.
Okay.
And then, so what we're trying to do is, that's the ultimate defensible space.
Okay,
We're
yeah.
gonna backfire to remove all fuels. So,
But what about, I know it's people first, so what, there's 2 of us that live here and there's 20 that live across the street. They get priority, but we did defensible space and they didn't.
it's not about people, because the people's not an issue.
They can
By the
get
time
out.
we come in, you
They're
guys are already
gone.
gone.
Yeah.
So-
And what about knowing it's the end of a road and these big fire trucks can't, they got to do a
And that's-
3-point
and
turn.
So I actually did go speak to your local fire district, which is Placer County Fire. And I've actually got a phone call out to the fire marshal for more questions, but the actual local district didn't have any specifics about hazard zones or problems or anything of that nature. So I do have some questions I'm gonna get on that. But yeah, for the most part, when you have this, it comes down to the engine captain. The engine captain has the ultimate say, and if he comes down and goes, yeah, you know what, this is unsafe, we're not going back here. That's it, we're not going. So there are variables, And it comes down to also the captain who's sitting in the front seat. You might have a rookie captain who's got 1 year as a captain, or you might have someone with me with 25 years, and you're gonna have different levels. That rookie captain may not want to come into this neighborhood, where me, on the other hand, I'm like, oh, this is no big deal. We'll sit here all night long.
Yeah, we got a pond, a pool. They have 2 more ponds down there.
And that's also what's also important is to have a water supply and water sources.
Yeah.
You know, irrigation water, ponds to pull from, and then also to put in actual private tanks. That's also another benefit, because with a private water tank, you can actually, the fire engines will fill from it. You can supply them because you have no hydrants. And 2, you could actually put a fire pump to it, and actually they have commercial sprinklers where you could run a few sprinkler heads and literally irrigate all around your house during a fire. And that gives you another layer of protection.
What size tank do you recommend? I think I like
So
500.
it varies depending on what you want to do with it, but I would recommend at least 2,500 gallons.
Okay, I mean, like I know in Reno, there was a friend that at the Washoe Valley fire a couple days ago, horse property, and they lost power and also all access to water. So the owner had to go get water and bring it in for like 40 horses. And that, I mean, but they weren't evacuated, they just lost power. So that's one reason why I feel like a lot of these people should have backup water. Just even if you, but we do have generators now, but still,
Exactly. And
we still want to have
and
extra water.
There are 2 different ways. I mean, you can run it gas, you could run it electric, and you can run it solar. So there's different avenues to power a water supply system. And again, this is all could be talked about individually for each property, depending on your needs or whatever there may be. But
Following up on tanks, do I understand it correctly that yes, the tanks are fairly universal. You can get taller ones, bigger ones, fatter ones, but the actual hookups from the bulkhead,
Do they have to be a particular size for local fire departments so that they can hook into?
Your normal plumbing and fittings and all that are all national pipe thread.
Right.
And it's actually national standard or national hose thread. And the standard is a 2.5-inch national hose thread.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's a normal standard connection to a fire engine. All fire hydrants and fire engines run a 2.5 connection for an intake and a discharge.
Okay.
So most of your fire hydrants around here are all going to have 2.5 national hose. So it would have the same threads on it as a fire hydrant. And talking to the battalion chief here at Placer County Fire, he says, we'd love to have those. We will use them, but there is no standards in place.
Right.
So it would be that it's a private property, it's up to you to maintain it. So he did bring up one point, which is, as time goes, it might be great, but if it gets left or ignored or not taken care of, that opens them up to problems like, oh, we have a private fire hydrant, in essence, at the end of your road, and it's 5 years has gone by and nobody's taking care of it. They come in here and they're like, where's our water?
Yeah.
So they're a little apprehensive on that when I talked to him today, but he is, yes, I would love to have property owners with their own private fire hydrants, with a fire department connection. So.
Are you guys on PCWA water?
NID.
NID.
Yeah.
PCWA for a while had a $500 rebate program for getting tanks that I think were anywhere up to 2,500 gallons.
Yeah.
I saw that.
You might want to call NID and see if they have something like that.
Now, if you did a tank, would you then like call the local fire department and say, "Hey, I've got a tank here"? That you
Yeah, so
I mean,
what
how
I-
would they know?
what I
Don't
would-
protect that house because it's gonna
And we irrigate, so our grass, we like to keep it wet, and it sounds like that makes a difference. I mean, because we do have a lot of weeds
We're
and.
talking about a tank.
Oh, sorry. Never mind. Back to that.
What was your question again?
So let's say I go get a tank because
Yes.
I've got NID, so mine is inch. That's what, like 15,000 gallons a day
Yeah.
coming out of that. So I can fill a really big tank in a day.
Mhm.
How does the guy coming in to fight the fire know that I've got a big tank up there
Okay, so
that he can?
talking with the local department, if depending on who puts the tank in, like if I was to do the tank, I would actually build the tank, install it. I would talk to the local fire department, have them come out, show that to them. And I already talked to the chief and I said, is there a way that you could update your maps? Because all the fire engines have maps with hydrants.
Cool.
I go, can we update this to have a private, what's called a fire department connection, an FDC? And he goes, there might be a possibility. So again, we don't know. This is all something that's I literally just started talking about it today. This is kind of a last minute type of thing. And I went to one of the battalion chiefs I know, and like, hey, what can we do? And what's out there, what's available? So there are multiple options for that. Like I said, you have the fire, prescribed burning. I'm saying backfire, same difference. And then we have the defensible space of removing the brush, taking out the fuel, removing the fuel, the ladder fuels, and any of the trees that are around the house. And then the other option would be your water supply. So a pond, NID, or a tank.
In a pool.
And a pool. And so like for me, I literally have a fire engine I bring with me. So whenever I'm working and I'm doing work, I literally have a fire engine that I can pull from ponds. I can drain a pool. I can fill my tank, and I could fight fire and do all that if I needed to. So I have hose. The gear I'm wearing when I'm working is all Nomex fire resistive. So I never started a fire. Pray it doesn't. But if it does, I have the tools and equipment to put it out. But yeah, so I take all precautions when I'm doing my operation. Just like when you're doing a prescribed burn, there's lots of checks and balances to make sure that it doesn't get out of control, because I'll tell you what, you don't want that to happen. It's kind of like when you put a fire out and it restarts and you got to go back to the fire and re-put it out. It's not a very good look.
How about my question that I interrupted earlier, keeping the weeds wet? I want to say grass.
Like irrigated pastures.
Irrigated
So,
pastures,
irrigating
yeah.
the pastures, yes, can help, but once the weeds are dry and dead,
Yeah.
you could water it as much as you want. It's not going to matter when that fire comes, because the easiest way to describe when a big fire comes is literally standing at the back of a jet engine. I fought fire in the middle of October at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's 50 degrees out. And I've had 100+ degree heat come right at me like a freight train at my face going, oh wow, that fire just changed directions. So you could water as much as you want, but as soon as that flame front and that heat comes, it's gonna dry it all back out.
Yeah.
Unless you keep pumping it. And again, it depends on the fuels and topography and what you've got going on. So there's a lot of variables to it, but for the most part, the amount of heat that comes in when that fire front comes, if it's a big fire, it's not going to make a difference.
So like the neighbor that owns the empty lot next door with I think that's 3 or 4 feet high dry grass, that's a problem.
It is. Like I said,
Yeah.
all that grass is fine to burn, like the prescribed burns, which is awesome. That's great. I would love to see more of that, because that would get rid of a lot of the problem of that grass. Because it gets to the grass, we can put the grass out easy, fast. It gets into blackberries, and then all of a sudden it gets into something, a ladder fuel, and as soon as it gets up into the canopy, then it turns into the 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 acre fires. And that's the problem we're dealing with today, is we're having overgrowth of fuels. There's too many ladder fuels that are from the ground level up to the treetops. And that's the problem we're facing. And that's the biggest issue. But in regards to the houses, remove the trees around your house, follow the guidelines on that, and you can even extend it farther. This is the minimum recommendation. What they're recommending is the minimum. You can always go more. You can always go more.
Should always go more.
The problem is everybody wants their trees.
Right, we don't want a dirt lot.
Nobody wants a dirt lot. So there are ways that you can have vegetation. You can have trees that are fire resistive, drought tolerant, things of that nature. Having the space, having a distance from all of the heavy fuels is going to be crucial. A lot of the home hardening is also very beneficial. I don't do any of that stuff. That's all contractor house stuff. That makes a difference too. But the key also is to get the brush and the fuels away from it. Yeah, embers can travel and they can go through your E-vents and your gable vents and do all kinds of weird stuff. Those things can sneak in anywhere. But the key is to get rid of as much fuel as possible, so the firemen coming in can be able to look at your property and go, yeah, we're going to work with this. We've got somewhere to operate from, because we do work on either 12 or 24-hour operational periods. So for example, we could go on a nighttime operational period right now. You could have 5 engines come into your neighborhood, and they're going to be here till tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And you guys wouldn't have been necessarily evacuated, but the engine companies are here because the fire may be the next ridge over. So that's typically a little bit of how fires work, what to expect. There is so much more. I could spend hours to try to fully help you to understand. That's kind of a little bit of a nutshell of what's going to happen during a fire. There's going to be a lot of chaos. You're going to have local firefighters, and then you're going to have not local firefighters. As I was coming up to Auburn today, there was a strike team from the Bay Area, Menlo Park and all that were going home. They were coming from one fire. They might have been coming from Reno. I don't know. So, but like right now, there are a lot of other problems within the fire realm because unfortunately, like everything else in this world, there's a staffing shortage. And every fire department in California is short-staffed, everyone. So there's not enough firemen right now. There's a shortage of firemen, and there's a shortage of money to pay for firemen. So there's a lot of political things on the outside, but as homeowners, just try to stick to the basics and do what you can to help the firefighters coming in to save your property.
This may not be your forte, but propane tanks.
Yes, would you like to know?
Ours is about literally 20 feet off of one side of our house.
Okay.
Would it be beneficial for us to move it farther away?
So propane tanks, I don't know in regards to any type of code or what's required on that, but typically propane tanks all have they're required to have a pressure relief valve. Because the biggest issue with a propane tank is what's called BLEVE, boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. When you expose heat to a tank, that liquid in there starts to boil, and then what happens is that relief valve will vent, and then it's venting the propane out, and then the fire ignites the propane.
Okay.
And that's actually that's designed so the whole thing doesn't blow up like a bomb. That's the safety purpose of that. The key with a propane tank is you don't want any fuels around it. That's the key. It could be closer to your house, it could be farther away from your house. But if there's any fuels where if the fire was to catch that fuel on fire, and then that flame was to either impinge or to radiant heat, increase the temperature of that tank, you could BLEVE or it would vent. So that's one consideration, is to basically you want to have as little of fuel around it as possible for that reason. So if a fire front or the flame front comes through, it would just blow past it and keep going, and it will survive.
Okay.
So, but in worst case scenarios, there have been fires where people have parked cars or debris or all kinds of stuff around it, and we've had it happen in wildland fires. It's literally a giant bomb going off. Even little propane, the little barbecue tanks will explode and go kaboom. So.